to constantly ask, well, how was your day, honey?
Yeah.
It's a little bit boring.
Let's plan time to talk. Let's plan time to, or just share space without talking. I mean, that
Yes,
sometimes
that's
has some
fine
value too. Let's take a walk. Let's take a trip. Let's have a date. You know, date night is hugely, hugely important, especially to those mom and dads. And that's for people in a relationship. But once people get out of a relationship, they're like, well, how do I get back to that mental space where I want to get back out there again? So we're going to dive into that a little bit more. I got to take a quick break because I got to pay for all these dates and relationships and stuff. I'm here with Michelle Hayes. She is the Monarch for Love, and we will be back right after this. And we are back. We're selling hope around here.
Hope yours.
So you were divorced.
Yes.
How did you kickstart your own self to be like, you know, I can do this or I might find it again? Was there a moment or was that a whole process and journey? And
I think it was.
You're big on butterflies. Did you have a metamorphosis of some kind?
Well, you know what? That's part of the reason why I chose the Monarch butterfly, because I saw myself as transforming. Mm-hmm. You know, I was in this relationship. Scott was a good guy. He was, you know, great in a lot of ways, but I stopped focusing on that. I started focusing on, okay, now I'm a mom and he's out playing golf on the weekends and here I am, and I started to build resentment, and resentment is what really, really destroys love. It's just a killer. Like, I don't even want to go there.
Yeah, I know, but yeah, resentment
yes.
is you're doing that and I'm doing this. This doesn't seem fair. This doesn't seem equal. This definitely doesn't seem together.
Oh, it definitely wasn't together. And the more I was seeking his attention, the more he was trying to move away because he was an avoider. And I didn't know that at the time. I know that now through my years of research and whatnot. But he was an avoider. He didn't want to talk about anything negative. And I wanted to talk about everything. I wanted to know why he was upset. I want him to know why I was upset. So I kind of think in my own mind, which, you know, we all think we know what we're doing in relationships and we're the better one and we're doing everything we can. And I thought, I really did. I thought, I am the greatest wife. I take care of the kids. I take care of the house. I do all of these things, and I just want you to love me in return.
Right.
And it's really not a bargaining chip.
Yeah.
You know, we can't say, okay, I'm doing all this, you got to love me. Somebody has to love you because they understand you.
And they have to hear you. Yes. I was reading an interview the other day. No, it wasn't an interview. It was a first-person account. It was Elon Musk, of all people. Oh. It was his first wife or I don't know if they were married or his long-term partner. And they tragically lost a child fairly young. Oh. His way to deal with that is we will never speak of this child out loud again. Her way of we need to constantly say that is out loud. Yeah. They both believed that their way was the right way to handle and process it, that they couldn't even have a conversation about what to, because they were so on opposite sides. And she's like, I couldn't understand him. He couldn't understand me. We were both bound by the grief and bound by the loss, but the way we approached it, we could not get on the same page. And I was like, oh my God, that's a worst case scenario, obviously, but that's certain circumstance where there is no middle and there's no compromise and there's not even a conversation.
Yeah, that's very common when you lose a child. That very often happens because men tend to deal with things much differently than women, and neither is right or wrong. Right. It's just different.
I know, and it's how it's hard to change your wiring, and if you handle it this way, and it just makes it incredibly painful, but you know, again, obviously that's the worst case scenario, but there's things in a relationship where it's like, if you cannot even talk and you cannot even communicate, then when that relationship ends for whatever reason, you're left questioning, like, was I wrong? What happened? Why didn't they understand me? And you're just so buried in confusion and resentment, as you said, and anger. And so you're like, well, I don't even know how hope is going to come in there. I mean, you can open up the curtains all you want and that light's not going to come in. And it's tough. It takes a long time to heal. But the process to healing is what? Finding somebody to talk to it about?
Well, I don't think it's that. I think that the process is really your own growth, because you look at a relationship, at least I do, and I'm sure some of my clients say they do. They look at their relationship and they're like, oh my gosh, I was so in love with him in the beginning. He was just my soulmate and everything to me, and I don't know what happened. Well, something did happen. And chances are it's, takes two people. They say, oh, it takes two, but in our minds, it takes one. And we're going to blame that other person.
Right.
I mean, I'm sure when, Scott tells our story, he says, oh, yeah, she was nagging me all the time. I couldn't take it. Or something to that effect. Or she was living...
She's like, he was always in sweatpants. But then you have to look at it, well, why did he decide that was okay?
Yeah, well, he used to always say, you live in a fantasy world. That's not how love goes, And I'd be like, yeah, but I think that this is the way love is. Mm-hmm. And his parents were the couple. They were like married for like 60 years and just like loving on each other. You could see by their actions and in their eyes that they still just adored each other. Mm-hmm. And I thought, oh, I'm going to have that being in this family because he obviously knows how to get that.
Right.
So I went into that with all that kind of hope because I had a family that, my parents were in the middle of a divorce. And so it was very, very, the contrast was, whoa. And I really wanted to succeed. And I was saying, oh, I'm never going to get divorced. I would never do that to my family. And,
right.
And then all of a sudden, 7 years or 8 years later, you're there and you're like, oh my goodness, how did I get here from this amazing man that I married to I just feel totally unloved by him. And I'm sure he felt unloved by me as well because I was criticizing him and I was telling him, and I was focusing on all the things I wasn't getting. But that's not how love is.
Yeah, and a lot of times, a day turns into a week, turns into a decade. And a lot of people would rather be in a bad relationship than no relationship. Oh. And so it takes a lot of guts to not only get out, but then pick yourself up and try again. And you have to believe again. And a bigger challenge as people get in their 40s and 50s and 60s and try and date again is they're very stuck in their ways and they're very like, I know what I need and like, and they're not open to anything. And when you are in that position where if you've lost hope or you don't believe that the possibility of new love exists, you need to be open to everything. You need to really rethink everything. If you're somebody who doesn't travel a lot, you need to travel. Mm-hmm. And you need to you need to spend more time in your 40s, 50s, 60s shaking up your comfort zone than you even do in your 20s and 30s, when we're a lot more open to it. Because the answers almost always lie there. And that is really tough because you've got baggage and you've got your guard up because you don't want to go through this again. And that makes it really hard for anything to get in positive.
That's true because we get in a very fixed mindset as we get older. Mm-hmm. We stay in that mindset that, oh, this is the way I am and I don't want to change but you have to have more of a growth mindset when you want the possibility of love in your life again.
Right.
You have to grow. You can't just stay childlike in your behavior in a relationship. You have to figure it out. And not only do you have to figure it out and learn, you have to apply what you know.
Right.
I mean, most of us know what to do in a relationship and what not to do. I mean,
yeah, you would think. We're all pretty much on the same page.
Right.
Like, you probably shouldn't do that. You probably should do this.
Yeah, you probably should. But people don't apply what they know, and that's very sad. And it gets us stuck.
They lose respect for the partner. They lose respect for the relationship. Respect is always a big thing that is really taken for granted. You brought up there's a lot of the R words. We're talking about resentment. We're talking about romance. We're talking about respect. We're talking about a lot of these things that are fundamental to whether it's a family relationship, a business partnership, two people sitting on a bus together. It's common courtesy. It's manners. It's listening. It's hearing. It's asking. It's all of these things that once you come out of that storm of a bad relationship, you're just like, I don't want to deal with anybody, which really makes you shut down societally, which is really hard then to just be like, okay, I'm going to go date Friday night.
Yeah.
It takes so much work to get back to the place where you're open to the possibilities.
I agree, but there is always a path there.
Yes.
I totally believe that. I believe that if you look at yourself and you have a little bit of self-awareness and you own your mistakes that you made in your relationship, because nobody's perfect. I mean, some people think they're perfect, but they're not. And they, in their mind, think they're the perfect wife or the perfect husband or the perfect partner. And it's unrealistic to think that you're perfect. I mean,
you brought up an interesting thing, the path. So I talk about that at our live shows all the time. I ask everybody who comes to our live shows. So I've asked this question of, I don't know, hundreds of thousands of people. I say, if I gave you a path to be in a happy, loving, growing, trusting, sharing, honest, intimate relationship with just one other person, would you sign up for that? And everybody would, and the people who don't, either they can't see the path or they don't trust the path. So you have to get, that's two parts to it. It's like, okay, here is the path, and do you understand that this could exist? And learning to trust the path again, because they felt like they went down that path before and a trap door opened on them.
That goes back to the fixed mindset. If they are thinking, I'm never going to have a relationship that I want, it's not going to happen for me. Yeah, that's what they're going to create for themselves. But if they start thinking, you know what, maybe there is someone for me, and maybe I'll find a way to change myself and look at the mistakes that I've made in a way that I can grow and share my growth with someone else. It's so empowering to grow with someone. Brian, my husband Brian, and I, our anniversary was yesterday, 10 years.
Wow, that's a big one, right?
Yeah, we've been together 12. We're doing really well, and we've had our moments. You know, out of 12 years, you have your moments where, that roller coaster's dipping down now. And sometimes I still feel challenged because I know that Brian would never intentionally hurt me. Like, we have that pact, and he knows I would never intentionally hurt him, but those hurts still happen.
Right.
So in my mind, I'm trying to think, I know he didn't mean it. I know he didn't want to hurt me, but the fact is he did. And sometimes I'll wait too long to say, I need to talk about this. And my mind will go on that train, and I'll be all over the place, and I'll be getting more angry over it. Meanwhile, when I choose to bring it up relatively soon, sometimes you have to take a little bit of a pause and get yourself together so you're not saying things that you don't want to say. But when I have that conversation with him, he is like, I totally didn't mean it. I knew I did it. I knew that happened, and I knew you were hurt, but I thought you were okay because you seemed like you were okay, and I didn't bring it up then. So, like, we both kind of tried to go under the radar with it, but then for those days, there's that underlying disconnection. And I just got tired of it, and I'm like, you know what? I gotta reveal myself, and I gotta be vulnerable, and I gotta talk about this. And that's what I did. And we connected. The connection was amazing after that. I mean, sometimes we cry or, just really share from the gut, why we make these choices that we make.
Right.
And then all of a sudden you're in this place where you feel so close to each other. And that's what I try to get people to do. We're afraid to share what we're thinking and feeling because we think, if I share this, they're going to judge me and they might not love me anymore. And that's the biggest fear that we have as a person.
It's got to make it a little easier on the relationship that you teach and talk and coach and care about this stuff.
Oh, that's definitely true.
It does. I mean, not everybody always practices what they preach, but I think that has to help. What was the one thing that you think you've made over the course of your relationship history that was the most significant thing? Is there one change that you're like, you know what, that really helped me figure out how to do this better?
Well, there are probably a couple of things, but definitely communicating. I mean, we all know we're supposed to communicate, but learning to communicate in a loving way instead of blaming and attacking is challenging to do when you're upset. You want to hurt that person because you're hurt and but I used to be a dragon. I mean, I used to yell and get really very, very excited and defending myself and, all of that. And I don't do that anymore. Every once in a while, my little tail pops out.
Right.
But then I realize, I got to reel that dragon right in because I don't want to feel like that.
Well, how did you do that? How did you make that change, though? Would you just make is it like breaking a habit?
It is, because what I did was, I think the